Hello and welcome to Literary Prospects. I'm Kelly Vick, your host, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Lori Gold is the author of the Zibby Media Summer Read Pick and NPR Book of the Day, Romantic Friction. She's also the author of an adult historical and 4 novels for young adults, all under Lori Goldstein. Her latest novel, Kiss, Marry, Kill, is out April 7th. Lori currently lives outside of Boston, where she fosters a writing community through her creative writing classes, book coaching, and writing retreats. Lori Gold, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you back. You were
Yeah.
on last summer to discuss your novel, Romantic Friction. And now we get to have you back again to talk about your ingenious new novel, Kiss, Marry, Kill. So Kirkus says Kiss, Marry, Kill has a delightfully wacky premise. Booklist says a funny, bewildering tale. Kiss, Marry, Kill is ultimately a story of friendship and choosing what makes us happy. Author Chandler Baker says, deviously clever and emotionally rich, Kiss, Marry, Kill is a sharp dive into friendship, fate, and the choices that change everything. And author Jordan Roeder says, where meta and meaning meet in the multiverse, you'll find Kiss, Marry, Kill, the latest page turner from Lori Gold. With her signature sharpness and wit, and a cast of relatable, ambitious, and unforgettable female characters, Gold explores love, fate, ambition, and the dangerous question at the heart of every life. What if I'd chosen differently? So, with that,
That's a lot. Yeah.
what can you tell us about Kiss, Marry, Kill? How do you describe this one?
Yeah. So I describe Kiss, Marry, Kill as the tale of 3 women who are best friends and co-founders of a health and wellness app that's about to hit the big time and go public on Wall Street. And they are at their summer outing and they play a spin on the conversation game Kiss, Marry, Kill. And when I say a spin, normally it's named 3 people and one person picks who would I kiss, who would I marry, who would I kill out of those 3 people. This time they change it up. So there's 3 people, 3 women, and they say, which one would you kiss? Which one would you marry? And which one would you kill out of all the people present at their summer outing? And so they each make a choice and they wake up in an alternate universe where they have each actually lived out the choice that they made. So one wakes up in bed next to a younger man, one is married to someone who's not her husband, and one wakes up next to a dead body.
As one does.
Yes, it happens. I think that's where the delightfully wacky comes in, maybe.
What was the spark that got this started for you?
So this actually goes way back. It was around early 2020. I was watching a TV show, a teen TV show called The Society. I'm not sure it even ran for very long. I don't think it ran past a season, but it was a kind of supernatural premise of these teenagers who go on an outing at school and they come back to their town and the town is empty. No one's in it. Parents, siblings, everybody's gone. And they're trying to figure out what happened and how to get out of this situation. Every time they cross town lines, I forget if either they disappear or they bounce right back into town. So they can't get out. They're stuck in this town. They get bored. So one of the episodes they're playing Kiss, Marry, Kill. And as soon as I was watching that and I saw them playing it, it would just was hit me as like, that is a great concept for a novel. Somehow a spin on the Kiss, Marry, Kill game. But I'm always trying to push my ideas further into what we call high concept, which are easily explained, but kind of big premise ideas. And so my mind immediately went to a genre that I love, which is this alternate reality, parallel universe, time loop, Groundhog Day, those kind of stories, like Palm Springs, the movie Palm Springs. I love that kind of stuff. And that's when it just hit me. Well, I'll change the rules and then they'll wake up in this alternate universe having made the choice that they made and having to live that life. So it was kind of a mix of kind of another TV show that inspired the book and my own bringing to it, the things I love about entertainment.
What do you think draws you to those stories about time loops and alternate
Yeah.
universe and that kind of thing?
I think as I wrote this, I really realized how much I think about and how much pressure I put on the choices that I make in my life.
Mhm.
And I think part of understanding like that's something I'm grappling with personally. A what if story is the perfect way to play out like the road not taken. And I think that's partly why I've always gravitated toward those. Well, what if this happened? What if we lived another version of our life? What if we could go back in time to a pivotal moment in our life and walk a different path and see what happened? So I think that my natural kind of inherent struggle with choice makes me gravitate towards those kind of stories. And there's a lot of my feelings and thoughts and wonders about the what if and how that haunts us that formed kind of the backbone of this book.
We also heard in the blurbs that this is very much a story about friendship.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I realized that all of my books, this is my seventh book coming out, and I realized they all have a theme of female friendship in them, which this book was intentional because of the way I was designing it, but it wasn't always the intention behind those stories. So then you have to take that step back and like psychoanalyze yourself and say, why are all of these books kind of converging to talk about this same theme?
Mm.
And I think it's twofold. I think obviously great friendships in my life now, but I think back to when I was younger and my first books were YA, and I didn't have great friends in school for a while. I was very shy. I was such a shy kid. It was hard for me to form those friendships. And my best friends in life came from college, but it took me a while to get there to really open up and embrace and be able to be myself in front of these women who, became my best friends, and how that changed the course of my life. So I think over all my books, I look at characters who don't have great friendships and characters who do have great friendships. And I feel like it's tracking the evolution of my own life.
Yeah. This is your first adult venture into the speculative realm. I almost said venture into speculative, but you've done some fantasy YA. So
Right. Yeah.
um, what was that like for you, sort of taking that dive into the speculative?
I was so excited to do it. I am a big fan of author Rebecca Cyril, who wrote
Mhm.
The Dinner List and In 5 Years and Once and Again and One Italian Summer. And I read her books and I'm always just like, why didn't I come up with that premise? Like, I want to write that story. So in some ways, I've been looking to do a version of kind of what I love that she does. And so when this idea hit me, I was really inspired. I didn't feel overly daunted the way I actually did when I was creating a magic system and, rules around that and kind of that grander fantasy. This is such grounded speculative that it was just really fun to explore. And I, had a lot of ideas of how deep into the speculative I was going to go and how deep do we go into there are physicists who say, this idea in the book of these parallel universes and alternate realities that could be true, and they have
Mhm.
evidence to support it. And of course, then there's the other side that says no. But there's so much grounded science in this, if you want. So part of the idea of figuring out what this book is how deep do I go into that? Is it a light touch? Is it a heavy touch? And hopefully finding kind of the middle ground that I think keeps it focused on the characters and their story arc, but giving a little bit of that otherworldly, like this is actually based in science. Even as wild as it sounds, there are scientific theories that would back what happens in this book.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. Speaking of the YA fantasy, you've also written historical fiction.
Yes.
You were on before talking about romantic fiction, which is more sort of modern realism, and now a bit of adult speculative. Um, do you think that you will continue to sort of play across different genres? And what do you enjoy about doing that?
I again, I feel like almost the trajectory of my books has been an evolution of what interests me. So I started out
Mhm.
writing YAs, and my first four are YAs because that's what I was reading and that's what I was consuming, and that was the world I was in. And I always think, as a writer, being very knowledgeable in the genre that you're writing is really helpful to understand what do readers like about it. And so it's a natural extension, I think, for many of us to write what we're reading. And so that was kind of why I was writing YA. And then the historical I always call like my passion project one-off. I've never really had a true passion project except for that book. I was so inspired to write it. And I was like, this is going to probably not fit into the bucket of me as an author in terms of creating a brand. But I really wanted to do it, and I did it, and I'm so glad it was published. But so I don't necessarily see going back to historical fiction, and I always kind of meant for the shift to be YA to this book club fiction. So the historical is like that's the road I took instead of going to the book club fiction. But I kind of see myself staying in this adult book club fiction, genre.
Yeah. Excellent. Great, because you're really good at it.
Thank you.
You have said that more than anything else you've written, Kiss, Mary, Kill pushed you the most in terms of craft.
Right.
What do you mean by that? Can you talk about that?
So I think I was a glutton for punishment because I took on 3 points of view, which I have done before and do enjoy. So, but 3 points of view. There's the speculative element, as I discussed. There's also multiple flashbacks to different times in these women's life in the original world before they flip into the other world. And so I've got multiple timelines. I've got 3 points of view. I've got speculative. It's a lot to manage. And there's a bit of a mystery because there's a dead body. And I've never written a pure like mystery novel before. And what you have to do in order to accomplish that and the seeds you have to plant to keep people guessing and to have a good twist or two at the end that people don't necessarily see coming, but that you've laid the groundwork for. It was a lot to manage. And so it really challenged my writing skills. For this book, I have storyboards, poster boards of like tracking everything. And it was a lot to figure out how to put it all together and then how to streamline it because there was a lot there. This book changed probably more than any other book in terms of revision and threads that were in or out and kind of shifts and changes. And it was all to the point of trying to get what is a complex storytelling world as simple and accessible for the reader as I could without sacrificing all the pieces that I wanted to do. And that was a hard balance to figure out. I guess readers will see if it worked or not.
What is your process normally like? How do you usually sort of start out with that seed of an idea and get to the finished draft?
Right.
And then maybe how was it elevated
Yeah.
for this one?
So normally, the process of coming up with the idea and the beginning stages were the same for other books and for this one. I always start with some sort of a germ of an idea, like this high concept premise, 3 women, they're going to play this game and wake up in an alternate universe. I always start with that kind of premise idea first. Then I start digging into who the characters are that are going to populate this world. And I spend a lot of time thinking of those characters and I create profiles for them. I think of their backstories. I always concentrate on their character arc. In most books, you want a character to start somewhere through the events of the story, they grow and learn, and they end somewhere different at the end of the book that is markedly different than where they were at the beginning. So I think about, well, what do I want that change to be? And how do I want them to go through this story, pushing them towards that change? So very much in terms of this character arc. And more recently, in my last 2 to 3 books, I'm really concentrating on what is that twist that people are not going to see coming, but I want it tied to the character growth. I don't want it just a twist for twist's sake. I want it very much tied to what the character's experience is and have it come out of that realization for the character. So that's a lot of the background work that I do, for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on how long I need or what else I'm working on. So that was the same for this one. Other books before this one, I would then plot, and I'm a plotter, so I plot from beginning to end. I used to do a much more detailed scene outline than I do now, just because I have a better sense of how to tell a story. And in the beginning, I had to learn so much about the craft of storytelling that over time I've internalized a bit more. So now I feel like I can plot to a little bit of a lesser degree, and then I start writing. And so, that process of character development and plotting, again, probably 2 to 4 months. And then normally I could write a first draft in 4 months. So you're talking about like 8 months and then some revision. This one, it took me much longer to write, to plot, than to write that first draft. I forget how long, but I mean, I started writing this in 2021. And I don't think I had a finished first draft until sometime in 2022. And that's a long time for me. I did have other projects going on in between, but that's a long time. And the biggest difference for this one is it sat for long periods of time over these like 3 or 4 years. So
Mm.
I needed the distance from it in order to come back and say, how do I want to approach the revision? How do I want to do the streamlining I talked about? So it might sit for 6 months. I mean, I wrote Romantic Friction after this one, but in the process of that one sitting, doing something else to take, distract my mind from Kiss, Marry, Kill, so then I could come back to it with fresher eyes. I wrote another book in between and published it in between. So this one really sat from 2021 to about 2024 was a period of writing, revising, kind of this novel in between other projects.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about romantic friction and Kiss, Marry, Kill and the timelines of
Yeah.
publication because you had said that Kiss, Marry, Kill was pretty much ready to go
Right.
before romantic friction was
Yes.
published. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit and the sort of publishing behind the curtains,
Yeah.
how that happens?
Yeah, so since Kiss, Marry, Kill sat so many times that I wrote Romantic Fiction in between, when I was ready to go on submission, I had both books. And so my agent and I talked and said, like, well, which one should we go, try to put out there first for someone to buy? And, we both thought romantic fiction has this AI component of a best-selling author. Finding out another author has used AI to write in her style. So it felt very, very timely. And we were selling these in, I guess, the beginning of 2024. So a couple years ago from now. And it was just kind of starting. Like, I feel like that was, and so the idea of like, oh, this is going to be one of the first books that really tackles this made sense for that to be the first book that would go on submission and be published. But ultimately, HarperCollins offered me a 2-book deal, and they knew that Kiss, Marry, Kill would be the second book in that deal. So they acquired them both, but again, they also felt like Romantic Frictions should come out first. So, even though it was written, this one was written before it, that was the one we put out first. And of course, because there was a little time in between, I went back and did another revision on Kiss, Marry, Kill before my editor actually saw the finished draft. And then she got that draft, and then we worked on it together. So, yeah, anytime you think something's done, it can always be worked on more. And I'm glad I had the time. I'm glad I had the time to keep working on this one.
And I can imagine that there would be, because sometimes I talk with authors and they talk about the 2-book deal and the pressure that kind of comes with that 2-book deal when you don't have the second one
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that time to really do the extra
Right.
revision, I would imagine would be great.
Yeah. And, I've had books back to back years in the past.
Mhm.
I think maybe the world is different than when I had those other books out. Social media is such a big part of promoting a book, and doing it well takes time. I am an author who does a lot of my own marketing and publicity work, and I can't figure out how I would have possibly been writing a book while also trying to promote Romantic Fiction last year. And so I'm very grateful I had this finished, that I could keep going in and tweaking as opposed to first draft and then a revision. It's a lot to have back to back year books, without having, the very, very big jump ahead that I had with this book. I think it's harder than it used to be, because I think the demands on the author in terms of
Mm.
promotion and all of that is a lot stronger. So your time to create a really great book has been condensed, and that's overwhelming. And that's a lot of pressure on the author, and a lot of, you're working all the time. If you're in that boat, even with the kind of lead I had, it's still a lot to try to be working on 2 books in, mine is slightly less than a year apart that they'll come out. Yeah, it's an intense period.
Well, I was wanting to talk to you about that because not only have you dealt with having 2 books come out in a year and everything that goes with that, but you also teach and run writing retreats and manuscript consultation. So, how do you keep from burning out?
It's a
How do you
great
do
question.
it, Lori?
It's tough. So I try to take the summer off from everything except writing.
Mm.
So, and if my books can come out like they are in the spring, you do a lot of promotion around that. You do events around that. But by the time I hit like, end of June, that'll be kind of at its, tail end. So I really can spend most of June, July, and August really just concentrate on my writing and kind of rejuvenating a little bit. I try not to teach or do too much manuscript consulting over the summer. So that's like my break time. And that tends to work really well for me. I love the summer anyway, so it gives me some more free time to do the things I really enjoy. But I do think the danger, a lot of authors have side hustles or other jobs or full-time jobs that they do. And I know some authors whose other jobs are not tied to the creative world. And in some ways, that's a benefit because you get the break. So if I'm teaching a course on creative writing and I'm editing someone else's manuscript, the same creative muscles are being used to analyze someone else's work or teach creative writing that I then also have to apply to my own writing. And so I feel like I can burn out faster because I'm using the same skill set to do both things. Whereas if I were, working on if I were in IT and that's why I was dealing with all of that kind of stuff. And then I got to come to my creative side, it would feel fresh and different. And so that doesn't kind of always feel that way for me. So I do need some of those breaks to just say like, I need to like recharge and concentrate on my work a little bit more and then get energized to go back and do the other pieces.
So you are generally sort of blocking it instead of trying to say mornings are for my writing and afternoons are for others. You kind of summer is for my
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actively say no to projects or I don't put teaching classes on my schedule. And partly because things tend to have a creep. And, I wanted to say like, I'm not pulled in any other directions. My focus is just on this. And it's too easy for me to kind of do more and accept more projects than I should. So it's almost like I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So either I'm saying yes to everything or no to everything. And so that's just how I figured out I work best.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense rather than
Yeah.
trying to continually fatigue those creative muscles and also shift gears from
Yeah.
your project to this project and another project. Um, Speaking of other people's projects, when Kiss, Mary, Kill did come out, there was another book with the same title. How
Yeah.
did that play out?
So yes, this was late last fall. My agent sent me the rights report of another book called Kiss, Mary, Kill that was coming out from Hachette by Kara Tanamachi. And she said, have you seen this? And I said, oh no. And we had just finalized the title, finalized the cover design, and all I could think was, oh, we're going to have to change this. And my agent said, well, this has happened before. We'll reach out, behind the scenes to her agent, to her editor. We'll work something out. So I said, okay, all right, that's great. I didn't also know when she was coming out, who was coming out first and who was coming out second. So I didn't know how far along her cover was versus my cover and those kind of pieces that I didn't know. So a couple of months went by, agents and editors talking, and I said to my agent, what's going on with the other title? Because we were about to announce mine, because we hadn't announced mine yet. And she said, well, we're really not getting anywhere. Nobody wants to change it. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to Kara and just like, let's just talk about it and see what we think. And so I reached out to her. She got back to me and she said, you know what? Let's have a call. And we hopped on a call and we hit it off very well. And we talked about our books and our inspiration. And we talked about the title. We talked about the problems of it, of would people confuse them? And if you type it into Amazon or Barnes and Noble or, Bookshop, are people going to come up with the wrong one and, not pay as much attention to which one they wanted? Hopefully they'll buy both. But so we said, what are the downsides of keeping the same title? Neither one of us really wanted to change. Neither one of us had a good replacement to change. And so it was Kara who said, like, why don't we just lean in? Why don't we do some joint promotion? Why don't we have some fun with it on Instagram? Maybe Book Talk will like have really fun of like, if you like this, you like that kind of thing. So I come out in April, she comes out in July. So as it gets closer to her release, we'll kind of do a lot more of that. But, we've had a couple calls since and, it's kind of, it's a fun story because we wound up kind of clicking and
Hmm.
wanting to collaborate rather than feeling competitive or any kind of like irritation about it. We're embracing it, and I think it's going to be fun to kind of come up with some neat things to do together.
I love that you took this thing that could be a potential problem and just figured out how
Yeah,
to turn it into an asset and a
yeah,
marketing
yeah,
asset and
yeah.
maybe a literary friendship as
Maybe,
well.
yeah. Hopefully.
Um, one of the many classes that you teach is a novel planning class for Grub Street. And I am curious about what you would say is the most important thing writers need to think about when planning a new novel.
So I have two things, if I can give you two, but I think
Yeah, you can give me more if you we'll take everything.
Um, I think understanding what a story is and that it is something that functions on two levels. We have the character arc, as I talked about when I'm doing my own planning, and we have the tangible story. So you have an emotional side to the story, which is what the character is going through, the lesson they have to learn on kind of a more of an emotional level, a growth level, and then you have the actual tangible plot. What's going on in the story? What are they doing? These are two things that every story needs, whether you're literary fiction, whether you're the most genre fiction, from an action-packed story to, a more quiet literary novel. They each have these two sides. There's an emotional side to the story, there's a tangible plot. But figuring out how those two are going to intertwine and how you're going to use the tangible plot to help the character along on this growth path. That's the point of the tangible plot. These women go in this alternate reality and live out these choices because it's allowing them to start to see who they really are, who they want to be, and have their growth arc at the end of the story. The experience of living this alternate universe shows them things that they didn't know about themselves. That's the point, and I want students to design the plot in tandem with those two things. Because sometimes people are very much writing, whether it's something that's very personal to them or experience they've gone through, and they very much know one side of the story, often the emotional side. They went through an experience and they want to put that on their character and they want to put that on the page. And they don't concentrate as much about what is the plot that ties into that. They almost feel disjointed because you're just forcing one thing without thinking they have to support each other. So that's the foundational thing that I teach in my novel planning class is how to create a character arc and a tangible plot that go hand in hand and go in tandem. My second piece is thinking about that ending before you start writing. So many students say, I'll figure out the end when I get there. What happens is the end is the most important piece of your story because it's when all of this stuff culminates, this tangible journey they're on and this character growth piece. And if you're just winging it, what all of these pieces you've written before, it's like having a jigsaw puzzle and you threw them all up in the air and they actually don't come down and form a puzzle that is complete at the end. You come up with an ending that doesn't feel earned for the story because you just need to slap something together because you didn't plan it ahead of time. So that's my second little piece. Think of that ending as early as you can and be aiming towards it, not just trying to, flailing towards it when you get to the end of the book.
Oh, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And you can see how that would save so much time
Yes. Yes.
from someone who has written without thinking of the end in mind. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
favorite thing about teaching?
Well, first of all, I love it because it is a social outlet because, writing is a solitary job. You're by yourself in your own head for quite some time. And so it's so nice to get to, be with other creative people as like colleagues, even though they're my students, like it becomes like a way to have that kind of back and forth in that exchange and talk about what's going on in the industry and talk about the thing that I do. So I love it for the social aspect. But I also love it because it makes me a better writer. I teach some classes where people will put up 5 pages at a time, and I have to come up with meaningful points of critique in like 10 minutes. And that is something that is a skill I've developed as an instructor. And I'm much, much better at it than I was. And it allows me to look at my own work with a more objective eye as well. And I can like see the problems faster because I've had this experience in trying to help and strengthen other people's work. It makes my work stronger as well.
That's great. Speaking of your experience, you have been open about the fact that after publishing, um, I believe it was publishing 4 novels, you had some trouble with selling a couple of
Yeah.
manuscripts.
Yeah.
And you have said that the thing that kept you going, was revenge.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you talk about that?
Yes. So I had my 4 YA novels published, and then
Mhm.
I had a couple more that had been written again as those novels were coming out and trying to sell, and they didn't sell. And it was it was surprising because I had published novels, so you think like naively, well, I'm
Mhm.
always going to be able to get a deal. It was frustrating, and it made me feel like I want to show them what they lost out on. So that's
Mhm.
the revenge piece. But it's kind of like proving to who I don't know because publishers aren't looking at me and care about that. So ultimately, it's proving to myself that I can do it, right? So this kind of idea of pushing myself, rejection, using it as a force to keep going, as opposed to a thing that signals I want to stop. It doesn't shut me down. It fuels me to kind of say, I can do better and I'll write a better novel and then that one will sell because I want to prove to myself that I can get past those rejections and I won't always be getting rejections when I'm trying to sell a book. And when one sells, then, it gives you the energy to even keep going even further. But yeah, a little bit fueled by that revenge queering, revenge writing.
And you said that you have trained yourself to be fearless.
Yeah. Yeah, it did not come naturally. I think the attitude I have now is well developed and 10 years into this business has contributed to that. But putting myself out there, fearless with whether it's I'm going to write another book and I'm going to try, whether it is I'm going to reach out to an author who I don't know over this kind of complex like problem that we're having, whether it's asking an author I don't know to blurb my novel because I love their work. It takes some courage. It takes
Mhm.
the ability to say, I might get ghosted. Somebody might say no. I might get rejected. And that takes a lot of courage to go out there and put yourself out there and ask for those things. And I have kind of adopted the attitude over many, many years of feeling like, just give it a try. The worst thing that happens is someone says no. But you don't get anything if you don't put yourself out there and try. And I think I was definitely not that way when I first started out doing this thing. I was not that way in life until I really kind
Mhm.
of got further into my writing career.
Well, you said that you mentioned earlier that you were quite shy when you were
Yeah.
younger. And another thing that is required of authors these days is public speaking.
Yeah.
Well, right? I
Yeah.
mean, doing these
Right.
podcasts, doing panels, teaching
Yeah.
all of those things. Do you have any tips for other writers who are maybe particularly trepidatious about
Yeah.
standing up in front of people and putting themselves out there in that way, getting past that? And
Yeah, you can't run and hide in the bathroom like I
yeah.
did when I was like in fifth grade and have to give an oral report. You can't do that anymore. Um, I think what worked for me and what I would say to other writers is preparation does
Mhm.
so much to cut away from that fear. So, with every novel I am releasing, I spend time thinking about the book. I spend time, rereading passages of it because I hadn't read this for a while, remembering my inspiration, writing down notes about kind of questions that somebody might ask. I mean, it's so great to have access to these podcasts because if you watch or listen to a bunch of these podcasts with authors, you get a sense of like, what are the kind of questions an interviewer might ask me? What might I be asked at a bookstore event, whether it's somebody from the audience or if I have a moderator, and getting a list of those questions and going over them. If you want to write out your answers, when I did this early on, I would actually record my answers and play them back so I could see how I sounded. And that was with my very first book because I was still very afraid of public speaking at that time. And over the years and doing this preparation with every book, I've gotten better and better at it and more confident because really it just comes from confidence and that preparation does wonders for that. And I definitely would push people to do that.
You also host writing retreats.
Yes.
Can you talk about the retreats?
The retreats have become, it's been 3 years that I've done a weekend retreat. I have done some day-long retreats as well, but the weekend retreats on Cape Cod in the winter have become something I so look forward to. And we've had repeat writers. I mean, we've some writers who've been there all 3 years. The community that comes out of that and this like energy of being in a room of 14, 15 people, 16 people, and people are just writing together. And it's amazing how much you feel inspired and how you concentrate in a way that you never would at home. So the productivity that comes out of it is incredible. But the ability to talk to all of these different people and have them get to know each other and to talk about, the highs and the lows and the struggles and then the ideas. When you're in a room with people and you say like, oh, I'm working on this, but I'm struggling with this piece, you can get ideas from other people who you've never met that transform your writing and transform your book. And that interaction isn't the same that happens in a class because there's something about spending a weekend with people and meals together, and you feel like a closeness to put yourself out there that can be harder to achieve. It's grown and developed into something that is well beyond me. It's this community of writers who come together and really support each other. And I'm at this point I'm honored to be a part of it.
How did you get started with doing that?
I had a few long-term students that had taken a lot of my classes, and at some point, there's no more classes to take, and you can do workshopping together, which I was doing, but it was all on Zoom. And we got together a couple of times in person, for these like day-long retreats because people were just craving that, like, I've only seen you on the computer. I want to see you in person. And they were really successful. And you could see the difference, you spending 6 hours together of people kind of really bonding. And then I would hear after the fact, oh, I met so-and-so at the day retreat that you did. And now we get together and we write together, whether it's in person or on Zoom. And I saw the seeds of these bonding happening. And so one of my other writing friends, she said, these are so great. Like, want to work together and try to put a weekend long one together. And the idea of like being able to do it with a friend of mine and we share the responsibility and we do it together. We just said, okay, let's do it for the first year and we'll see what happens. And it's kind of going strong ever since.
Fantastic. The last time you were here, you said that you wished you'd known more about how the publishing industry works as a
Yeah.
debut author.
Yeah.
Along those lines, what's your best industry or marketing advice for aspiring authors today?
Gosh, in one piece. I mean, there's so much, but I think educating yourself on the business is really important. And so this isn't the most transparent industry. So I don't want an author to take this advice and say like, I'm going to go ask my editor 1,000 questions. That's not what I mean. They're subscribed to Publishers Marketplace, subscribe to Publishers Weekly. There are industry articles in there that maybe aren't necessarily perfectly sales and marketing related, but as you read through, oh, what are the strategies that Simon & Schuster are now doing to promote authors? You can be making note of those. Oh, they're talking about, doing something on NetGalley. They're talking about doing this, doing that. The more you steep yourself in those newsletters and kind of industry just happenings, the more you start to get a picture of the business before you get there, before you get to the point where you're with an editor and in front of your sales and marketing team. So I think that's really important, and that's an avenue to do that. I also think there are terrific podcasts where people, yes, there are many podcasts with authors, but Lee Stein in particular, and Andrea Bartz does as well, will interview sales and marketing people at, the big five publishers. And I have learned so much even from that, as much as I feel like I know about the business, listening to these people who are the head of publicity at these publishers. Oh my gosh, you can learn so much that is so useful for you then to take in when you go into your first sales and marketing team. So there are many avenues, more than there were when I started out. So I just say people find them and take advantage of them. And those are a few places I would point people at the start.
That's fantastic. As you know, we have a traditional last question on this podcast, and it is, when Kiss, Marry, Kill is made into a movie or series, what do you think the theme song should be?
Oh my goodness, I haven't thought about this. So I mean, I guess I have to say, because I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, I have to say So High School, because she also name checks Kiss Mary Kill in So High School. So I think that would be the perfect fit.
That's wonderful. Can't wait to see the movie
Me
and
too.
hear the song. Lori Gold, thank you so much for being here today. It's been really wonderful getting to talk to you again, and we'll hope to have you back again soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Kelly, for having me. This was great.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.